The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Happy Wednesday to all of you out there. I'm Keith Tebow from FRC Media News, and on Wednesdays we have a standing invitation to speak with the Mayor of Fall River, Mayor Paul Coogan, who's with us again this week. Mayor, how are you?
Doing fine, Keith. How about you guys?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I actually want to start with some school issues. The school committee began its deliberations on its fiscal 2026 budget, and one of the items that came up yesterday, which has been, and we've talked about this before, is school transportation. Currently, what happens is the money for school transportation is paid for by the city. It's not really a school department expense, where in other communities, and even with Diamond Regional, that money is actually covered by state resources. Talk about your objections and maybe changing that, and if there's been any movement on that at all statewide.
My objections are, obviously, if you look at Fall River, we're fortunate enough to have a vocational school, Diamond, and our comprehensive high school, Durfee. So let's say, for example, that Keith Tebow's family lives down at Sunset Hill. One child's going to Diamond, the other one's going to Durfee. The child that goes out the door to go to Diamond, the state pays 95% of the bus ride. The child that goes out the door to go to Durfee, the state does not reimburse you any money for that. And that's kind of been my cry for as long as I can make it. It doesn't seem equitable at all. I question where these formulas came up and how anyone thought that was a good idea. I was told at one point in conversations with the state, it was because the word regional was in the definition of was in the name of the Diamond Regional Vocational School. I said, well, that's all well and good for the kids coming from Swansea, Somerset, and Westport, but what about the inner city kids that are going to one school and the other school's a half mile away? It makes no sense. Why are they reimbursed for the inner city kids? But they obviously are far smarter than we are, and they thought that was the way to go. But it doesn't seem fair. And last week we hosted the Mass Municipal Association breakfast here, and that was the topic of conversation. And a lot of people are looking at this now, and it's just something that you have to think of and think in terms of how can that work? If you're a regional school and you're taking kids from other towns and you want to bus them, okay, that sounds fair. But if you're in an inner city and you're paying 95% of the bus ride, which is 95 cents on every dollar, and the kid to Durfee gets nothing, it just doesn't seem right.
And I know that for the upcoming fiscal year, I believe that the cost to the city could be, over $13 million, which is, I believe, about a $2 million increase over this year. And that's a burden that the city has to pay, right?
Correct. It's a straight pass on to the city. It doesn't count against our contribution to net school spending. And I mean, think of this. The city, the schools do a great job of mapping out the routes, telling us where the kids live, making sure the bus companies, whether it's all of our vendors, whether it's Whaling City, Amarillo's, or Tremblay's, pick the kids up at their houses and know what to do. The city has no ability to do that. We don't know who's enrolling and who's going to be picked up and who's has the special education needs and who's McKinney-Vento. The schools do this. All they do is hand us the bill, and I am confident that the schools do everything they can do to lower the cost that they pass on to the city, because they work hard at it and they know what they're doing. But at the same time, it's just a pass through to the city, which is a bill we got to pay. And I'm not knocking any work that's done by the schools. They're playing within the rules and they're doing what they're supposed to do, and the city's doing what it's supposed to do, but it's a wacky system.
Yeah. One final question on this. When you had the meeting with the MMA, I would assume there were other communities that were there. Is this an issue in other communities as well, from what you can tell?
It's an issue everywhere. I mean, the only people that seem to have the waiver are the regional schools, and that could be Bristol, Plymouth, or the big folk schools. But we don't, obviously our kids are reimbursed at a set rate. If you go to a vocational school, you're reimbursed at a much higher rate. The bus is covered, so it's just a little bit unsettling to me how no one thinks that this, maybe we should try to level the playing field a little bit here and tackle this problem. It is a law, but it's subject to appropriation, and the legislature and the governor and those guys don't put any money into it, so there's no reimbursement at all.
Yeah. I want to switch gears. If all goes well, 1 week from now, trains will be on a route bringing commuters from Fall River to Boston and parts in between for the first time in over 60 years. It's scheduled to launch on Monday, and I will ask for your reaction next week when we meet. But just thinking about, this long process and how long it's taken, and now it's literally on our doorstep. What's going through your mind, and what do you hope to experience on Monday when the train does start its service?
It's going to be great. I mean, I just think it's going to be so different for the residents in Fall River. And think of what we're talking about here, folks. These are the people that live in Little Compton, Tiverton. They want to go to Boston. They're coming to Fall River. Hopefully they buy gas, they buy a sandwich, they do something. They get on a train, they park down at our terminal, and they come back. And for our residents, I mean, like I always said, I worked at Durfee so long. There was so many kids that went to school in Boston, whether it was Boston College, UMass Boston, and those parents would go up and visit them. It's just going to be another link to the capital of Massachusetts, and it's really going to be unique when you think of what we're going to be able to do. I know I don't want to sound redundant, but you look at my term in office, the 5 major things that have come to fruition in the city. I mean, and I never did any of it alone. We did it with tons of help, with years of help before Paul Coogan was elected. But you got the train, you got Route 79, you got the waterfront, you got Diamond, you got Durfee. I mean, there's a lot of big, good, transformative things going on in the city. And next week, we're going to be kicking off the train. So I'm extremely happy to be part of it, but I'm not taking all the credit. We were working hard on it, but other people did long before me.
I got to ask you before we leave, do you plan on being there at 5:05 Monday morning to greet the commuters leaving Fall River?
That's not a bad idea. I don't know when the second train is, but I usually am at the gym at 5 o'clock. So I'll go.
There you go.
It's more
all right. Well,
important.
maybe you can meet them on your way to the gym, because they'll be waiting for the train.
You could be
then,
right.
so.
You could be right.
All right, Mayor Coogan, as always, I appreciate your time. We'll talk next week.
All right. Thanks, Keith.
All right. And thank you for joining us at FRC Media. Have a great week.